The test held yesterday. All right. Quite a surprise for me. I didn't know that there was going to be a test and all that. But good, you all had a test, so you all got a little bit of understanding of how you are doing in that test. Has the marks been shared with you all? Do you all know your marks?
No, sir.
Oh, you don't. Okay, so I don't know that I'm supposed to show them or not, but I'm showing them in any case. So anyway, this is firstly the Juhu set of marks, and Aniket would share the entire list with you. But let me start off by saying that 25 plus is a good score, right? So well done. You know your concepts. So Manthan, are you here? Manthan, can I see you?
Yes, sir.
Where are you? I can't see you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So is it the first time that I'm seeing you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, why?
First time.
Why? All right. So don't keep your cameras off. Keep your cameras on if possible. So well done,
Okay.
Manthan. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
And others also 25 plus is a very good score. In Kharghar, we have a couple of people who have, got joint highest. So Krunal, I remember this name. Okay, Krunal Somani. You have asked questions before. I remember this name. Right, Krunal, where are you? Are you here?
Yes, sir. I am here.
Okay, so where? I can't see you. Is it there somewhere?
Yes, sir. My camera is on.
Cameras on. Okay, congratulations. Well done. And
Thank you.
Mahendra also, well done. Joint highest if you're looking at separate batches.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, I am a little worried about those who have like scored a 3 and a 4 and a 6 also for that matter, and a 7 also for that matter. So anything below 10 is cause for concern, right? So I'm not calling out the names, but you all can see your names out there. See, even if I didn't know any answer and I randomly just chose some answers, I would still probably get more than 4. Even if I give all A's, for example, if I answered everything as a A, then the probability I'll get 25% marks at least. All right. So we definitely want more than a 25% mark in any case. But that is like, even by not knowing any answer, you'll probably get 25%. Okay. So this is not a very good score. You need to work hard. Again, if you're going in that mode of, okay, I will one day before the exam wake up and magically everything I will do, that approach is not going to work. So you need to pull up your socks, all those who have done badly in here. And similarly here, there are a lot of 10s also. There are a lot of people with 10s, but I mean, 9 and 10, there's not much of difference, but all these people, I mean, Sumit Thakur, 1 mark is like unbelievable. How did you get that one right? Okay, what you must have worked really hard to get that 1 mark right. 1 out of 30. I mean, it's amazing. It's unbelievable. I can't think about how bad your luck was on that given day. That all choices made were totally wrong. So this is something that is, I'm sure if you're done this badly here, you're then not doing very well in Java either, because a lot of these concepts are Java concepts also, core Java concepts. So there's no reason for you to score so badly, although you got less than 10. And you'll need to work on your, module. Okay. So having said that, let's move on with the session. Okay, so this is the test actually. Quickly going through some of the options. On compilation of C# source code, the output we get is what? What we get here. Now, all of the answers seem correct, but what is the output that you get? You get an assembly. And the format of the assembly is in IL or MSIL format. Now by elimination, IL and MSIL both were the same thing, so both cannot be correct. And then bytecode is what we call it in Java. So by process of elimination itself, you could have gotten assembly. Okay, JIT compilation converts what to what? From what to what?
IL to native code.
IL to native code.
IL to native code. So none of these options said IL to native code. Okay, and which is why none of them were correct. Garbage collection happens, right?
When the CLR decides.
When the CLR decides. We have been talking about this frequently. App domains are the area in memory where an application runs. Okay. Actually, area inside a process where application runs. Even more specific answer. So B is the correct answer. CLS is a set of rules that are allowed that all .NET languages must follow to be able to call from other languages. C is the correct answer. Okay. CTS type of float was
M.single.
single. Char variables occupy 2 bytes. Following is an example of unmanaged code. So code in Windows DLLs and COM DLLs are examples of unmanaged code. Okay. When is a static constructor called? And the correct answer is
When the class is loaded.
when the class is loaded in memory. Which of the following is true for a static class? So it can contain only static methods is true. It cannot be instantiated is true. It cannot be used as a base class is also true. So therefore the correct answer is all of the above. Right? What are the default access specifier for members in the class? What is the correct answer?
Internal.
Private.
Private. And if you have it at the namespace level, at the namespace level, the default access specifier is internal. So yeah, so that was the next follow-up question. That's for internal. Okay, now what's happening in here? You're creating an object of the derived class. So the derived class constructor this is the one that will be called. Which constructor of the derived class, which constructor of the base class will this one call? Which one of the base class will this call?
No parameter.
No parameter. Why no parameter? If we don't tell it what to call, it will call the no parameter constructor. Do we have a no param constructor in the base class?
No.
No. So
No,
the correct answer is the code will not compile. It will give you an error. Because you're trying to call the no param constructor of the base class from here and there is none defined there. Okay. Which of the statements is true? To overload a function defined in the base class from the derived class, do we use any keyword? Do we use any keyword to
No, sir.
overload a function?
None of them.
No. So none of the above is the correct answer. Which of the following statements is true? To hide a function defined in the base class from the derived class, which keyword do we use?
New keyword.
New keyword. Which of the statements is false? False, okay. To override a function defined in the base class from the derived class, the base class method must be a virtual method, correct? That's true. To override a function defined in the base class from the derived class, we use the override keyword. That is also true. To override a function defined in the base class from the derived class, the method signatures must also be the same. That is also true. So none of the above statements is false. Which of the following statements is false? An abstract class need not have any abstract methods is true. Abstract class cannot be instantiated is also true. A class that contains at least one abstract method needs to be marked as abstract is also true. A derived class must implement all abstract methods of an abstract base class, or the derived class must be marked as abstract is also true. So none of the above statements are false. Okay. Which of the following statements is false? A sealed class cannot be used as a base class. True, false?
True.
True.
Sealed class can be instantiated. True. Sealed class can have virtual methods. Cannot have virtual methods. True? Agree?
Yes,
True.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Because you can't have inheritance and cannot have abstract methods. So none of these statements is false. Okay. In which of the following statements is true? In late binding, we declare an object of the base class and allocate memory for a derived class. So is that true? Yeah, declare an object of the base class and allocate memory for the derived class. True. Late binding, we do the reverse. So that is false. Which of the following statements is true? Okay. So this is true, no? Okay. Which is the correct explicit implementation of an interface? So for explicit implementation, you can't have public. So both of these are out. So between this and it's between B and D, which is the correct method? D for donkey. How do you declare a nullable int? So int question mark A.
Yeah.
Which statement is false? Okay. Out variables need not have an initial value is true. Out variables lose their initial value when they enter a function is true. You must initialize an out variable before control leaves the function is true. Out variables cannot be used in the function before they are initialized is also true. And none of the above is false. Which of the following statements is true? Ref variables need not have an initial value is false. Ref variables lose their initial value is false. You must initialize the ref variable before control leaves the function is false. Ref variables cannot be used in the function before they initialize is also false. So none of the above are true. Okay, what are the values for rank, get length, and get upper bound? Firstly, tell me the rank. Rank is?
True.
True.
So both of these are out. A, B, or C. Get length of 1. Get
Three.
length of 1 returns.
3.
Get
Four.
length of 1.
4.
4.
Sorry. Sorry, correct. 3. She said the correct one. Get length of 1, not get length of 0. So returns 3. So it's a 2, 3 and something. And get upper bound of 0. So upper bound of this will be 3.
3.
0 to 3. So 2, 3, 3. This is the one. What does array dot index of return if the array element is not found, the search element not found?
-1.
-1. Which class is used to iterate through a sorted list of t key comma t value? So which one is it?
D.
Yeah, key value pair of t key comma t value. Which interface does this inherit from? I collection inherits from
I enumerable T.
I enumerable of t. In generics, what constraint means that t can only be a value type?
Where T : struct.
Where t colon struct. What is the base class of all classes of no class has been specified in the base class? This is the, like, a New Year present for you. I'm not
Object.
even giving the answer. Okay. A delegate created by us inherits directly from the following class. From which class?
Multicast.
Multicast.
Multicast delegate. So these are the answers that we had out there. Okay. So let's continue from our last example.
So will you be sharing those marks?
I want Aniket will, if he,
Okay. Okay.
I don't know. I don't even know that you're not supposed to be seeing the marks. So those who saw the marks, now bonus. If you've, if you're not supposed to be seeing the marks, then I have already shown some this thing. I showed the top few and I showed the bottom few. Everybody else is in between. So you know what your marks are, roughly. It's between 23 or 24 and 10, right? Not bad, no, not a bad range to know. It's between that. But anyway, I'm not showing you the marks. Aniket will do that if it is allowed. If it is not allowed, as I said, I have already, please erase that from your memory, whatever marks you've seen.
Okay.
All right. Let's take the session ahead. Continue from where we stopped yesterday. So the last example we did was exception handling, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we had done one part of exception handling, correct? We had done one part of that, which is the user section. So let's go in for a new project and try out the developer section. What do I mean by user and developer section? What do I refer to that as user and developer section?
The one who creates an object.
Is the developer or is the user?
The one who creates an object is a user.
Correct. So we have done that. What does the user do out here? He's doing the try catch. He's saying that the developer is throwing some exception and I'll be writing some try catch code on that. Now I'll take you back to what we did on day 1. Okay, so let me just open this project, create a new project, and day 8 today. Okay, so I'm going to just copy paste some code from my existing thing, and I want to discuss with you what we are doing out there. So my question to you is this. Okay, it's more of a conceptual question than any real syntax-based question. Okay, I hope you can see the screen, what I'm doing.
No, sir, screen is not visible.
Good. No, because I don't want to show you the screen, because the screen contains the finished product, and I don't want to show you the finished product. Okay, and let me show you the screen now. Okay, so back here. So this is what we've done on day 1 or day 2, where we are creating a class and we were having a property in the class which we were trying to validate. Okay, and if the data was not valid, we were, on day 1 we said that we are trying to throw not throw an exception, but give an error message out here. And I said on day 1 itself, I said day 1 or day 2, when we reached the code, I said, I think it was day 2. We said that we should not be writing code like this. This code is a very wrong approach to use. But because we don't know other concepts, we're going to use this approach. So my first question to you is, why do you think I said that this approach is a wrong approach? What is the problem in this approach? It worked fine. It gave you the error. It showed you the message. What is the issue in here? Why am I saying that this is a horrible, horrible way of writing code?
Because, sir, for some wrong input, the code is still running and it is not ending at that particular point.
No, maybe
The
I
error
don't
is-
want it to end. Maybe I don't want it to end. In that case, would this be okay?
But still, it will give a wrong input for unknown field, maybe.
By
Or the
default, the
wrong-
value would be 0, right? So any value more than 100 is not accepted. And I'm telling him that it's an invalid value. So it will give me
Sir,
the
here,
default value of 0. In this
here we,
example, yes, sorry.
yeah, here we don't have a mechanism to handle an incorrect input.
That's okay. I'm saying, give a valid value. If you don't give a valid value, I'm not accepting it. That's all I'm doing. I'm not saying that I'm not forcing you. You must give a valid value. All I'm saying is if you don't give a valid value, I'll tell you that it's invalid. So what is wrong in this approach? What is so fundamentally wrong in this approach?
यूजर फ्रेंडली नहीं है सर
Mm-hmm.
यूजर फ्रेंडली नहीं है सर मतलब
यूजर फ्रेंडली नहीं है. मैं आपको अगर अंग्रेजी में प्रश्न कर रहा हूं तो आप हिंदी में क्यों जवाब दे रहे? आप फिर यूजर फ्रेंडली भी हिंदी में बोलिए ना. यूजर फ्रेंडली को हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं फिर?
पता नहीं सर
पता नहीं, फिर बोलिए मत. आपको हिंदी भी नहीं आ रही है, अंग्रेजी भी नहीं आ रही है, इस भाषा में उत्तर दीजिए. यूजर फ्रेंडली को हिंदी में बताइए ना मुझे. आपको अगर हिंदी बात करने की इतनी शौक है तो यूजर फ्रेंडली को हिंदी में बोलिए. आप क्यों यूजर फ्रेंडली शब्द का इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं? शुद्ध हिंदी में बोलिए. फिर क्लास को हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं?
कक्षा।
तो आप बोलिए मैंने एक कक्षा बनाई है यहाँ पे. इनहेरिटेंस को हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं? अनिल कपूर का पिक्चर था शायद वो,
विरासत।
हाँ. तो विरासत बोलिए, फिर इनहेरिटेंस मत बोलिए. प्रोटेक्टेड को हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं? प्रोटेक्टेड को सुरक्षित, तो सुरक्षित बोलिए. एक भी इंग्लिश शब्द का इस्तेमाल मत कीजिए. इंग्लिश भी मत बोलिए. अंग्रेजी शब्द का इस्तेमाल मत. What nonsense is this? You're being told multiple times over, please speak in the language of your choice, of whatever you're doing out here, not of your choice. In the interview, you're going to go and give this sort of an answer. How many times to tell you all this? And you just don't want to learn, right? You don't want to improve. User friendly nahi hai. Can you speak English or not? Can you not say it is not user friendly? Is it possible for you to do that or no? Or you don't know English? What language are you going to go and give the interviews in? Ridiculous. 6 months, 4 months, 5 months, people are hammering into you that speak in the language that you're going to be comfortable in the interviews. At least with me, no communication in any language other than English. So what is the problem in this approach? Is my original question. Why is this so wrong? Why am I saying this is such a wrong way of doing code?
Sir, the user will get to know that he have entered the input at last, not in between.
No, anyone else would like to give any other? It all comes down to this. It all comes down to this. What is the issue with this? With this approach? So what is the problem here?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
it's syntactically it's not wrong, but approach is wrong. Suppose we are making any product and a user is using this product. At that time, this error will get occur, and user is not able to rectify it. So
Okay. So I'll accept this answer. This is the closest that I want. Was that Rani speaking?
yes.
Okay. So well done. This is what the problem is. So let me explain it in a little more detail. Okay. To begin with, when you're writing this, who are you doing? What role are you performing right now when you're writing this class? Are you the developer or are you the user?
Developer.
Developer,
Developer.
right? So you're creating a class. Now, when you create a class, who's going to use your class? Is it the end user who's going to use it or the user who's going to use it?
User will use.
User will be using your class and creating some software for the end user, right? Now, do you know what type of software the user is going to create? Is he going to create, for example, a console application, or is he going to create a web application, or is he going to create, let's say, a desktop based application, or is he going to create a service that's going to be called from somewhere? Do you know any of this right now? Supposing I create this class and I give it to you, to all 250 of you all. Do I have any control over where you're going to use that class or how you're going to use that class?
No control.
No control. And there should not be also. I'm giving it to you. You want to use my class. So you have to be able to use my class in different scenarios. Now, when I write a console.writeLine, whom am I talking to? Whom am I informing or whom am I giving this message to? Is it the user or is it the end user?
User.
Is it the user who sees this?
End user.
See, that's why I'm saying my problem with y'all is that y'all are not in the right space. Y'all are not thinking correctly. Syntax we can correct. The problem is the thinking correctly. It is not the user you're communicating with. Who's going to see the message? Console.writeLine, who will see the message? Who will see the message?
End user.
End user. So right now, the developer is talking directly to the end user. But there are two problems here. First problem is, I don't know who the end user could be. It may be a console app, but it may be also a web app. So the console.writeLine will work in a console app, but will bomb in the web app, will cause the server to crash in the web application. Are we clear on this, everybody? So first thing is, the developer should not talk to the end user because the developer does not know who the end user is. First thing. Second thing, when the developer talks to the end user, you're completely eliminating the user by directly going to the end user. So the user has no idea that there's something wrong that has happened in this program. Are you getting this, everybody? The user is not knowing about this. That the invalid value is coming. You're directly going telling, I'll tell the end user. But your responsibility is towards the user. No? You should inform the user that something has happened in your code, whether the value that has come to me is not a correct value. So that part is completely missed out. Are we clear on this, everybody? So for these reasons, it is a crime that you're committing. I had said this on day 1 also, or day 2. That this is like writing criminal code, where the developer talks to the end user directly. And this happens in your case, not because you want to commit the crime, because in your mind, there is no distinction. In your mind, I'm doing both jobs, so let me do it anywhere. But the approach that I want you to think I can talk to the end user directly because I know who my end user is going to be. Okay, my net connection is showing unstable. So if I drop off, I'll join back in. Can you all hear me clearly right now?
Yes, sir.
It's audible.
Yes.
Okay. So it just flashed a message saying my net connection is unstable. So if that happens, I will join back in a, if I get disconnected. So the point I'm making here is this, that your job as a developer is to inform the user that something has happened and not worry about the end user. Let the user take care of the end user. Okay. So the developer should be talking to whom now? Should talk to whom? To the user. And user will do what? User will communicate to the end user, whatever he wants to do. Are we clear on this, everybody? So now the question comes up is, how do you want to inform the user that something has happened? Right? The developer, now the issue is, how does the developer inform the user that something has happened? The first possibility is, it is a critical problem and you want to force the user to take some action. You're saying that unless you solve this problem of mine, I don't want you to carry on with your code. And if you don't solve the problem, if you don't handle this problem, I will crash the program. I will end the program here because it is a critical problem. In such cases, you throw an exception. So your code would do what here in this case right now? Instead of a console.write line, what will it do? It will throw an exception. What is the user forced to do now? If your code is throwing
Handle
an
that exception.
he's forced to handle it. Now, what he does in the handling is a different issue altogether. He might decide to ask the end user again to accept the value. He might tell the end user, what nonsense are you sending? He might correct the value himself. That is up to the user. Now, what the user does, I am not worried about that. I am informing him that you cannot send me a wrong value. And if you send me a wrong value, my program will crash. Are we clear on this, everybody? This is what I mean by a critical way of informing the user that something has happened. Okay. Now here in this example, in this particular example, what is happening? When is the situation being reached? At what point? When are we thinking about informing the user? Yes. At what point are we doing this?
When user inputs incorrect value.
When your data is invalid, when the value that you're getting in your data is incorrect. When there's an invalid value being sent to your class, that's when we want to do that. Now, let me ask you this. Data not being valid, okay, invalid data being sent to you. Is this problem critical or non-critical? Is this problem critical or non-critical?
Critical.
Very critical. Very, very critical. The most critical thing that could ever happen in your code. All your programming life, you're going to be writing code which ensures that values that come into the system are valid values. All your efforts are going to be towards that. So if data is not valid, that is the most critical thing. So ideally, in this case, what we'll be doing, we'll be throwing an exception. Are we clear on this, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's discuss the other possibility. I'm not writing that code immediately right now, but let's discuss that possibility. The second possibility is that the developer wants to inform the user that something has happened, but not force him to take any action. So this is what I call as non-critical. So you let him know that something has happened in the system. You notify him about a change in state. You notify him about that something has happened in here which I want you to know about. but it is okay if you don't take any action. It is my job to notify you. Okay, now what you do after that is your lookout. Even if you don't do anything, it's okay, because it is not a critical problem. Now, such cases, you would be raising an event. In the second example, what we will be doing? Non-critical things will be raising an event. So raising an event is a non-critical way of the developer informing the user that something has happened in the system. Are we clear on this, everyone? Which we'll look at in a subsequent example. Right now, what are we seeing? We are seeing the critical way. Questions, if any, about what we just spoke about, this approach that we have to take, because this is not syntax. This is to do with how you are going to design your program. Questions,
Can you
if any?
please repeat raising thing?
I have not explained how raising an event works.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have not explained that. I've not gone into that. The point I made is that there are two ways of, let's say I'm the developer and you're the user. There are two ways in which I can inform you that something has happened in my system. First possibility is a critical way. In a critical way, you'd be forced to take some action. If you don't take action, your program ends. To do that, I'll be throwing an exception. Understood? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The second way is non-critical, wherein I only inform you that something has happened, but I don't force you to take any action. And that is called as raising an event. Understood?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So should we move on to the code? Any other queries before we jump into this? All right. So let's look at the code that we wrote the other day. Here I'm doing the job of the developer where I'm writing a console.writeLine. So instead of doing a console.writeLine, which you should never do, you're going to throw an exception. Now, when you say throw an exception, what do you mean by throw an exception? You're going to create an object of either the exception class or any of its derived classes. Okay, this is what we had seen yesterday. You're going to create an object of either the exception class or any of its derived classes, and you're going to throw this exception. Okay, so let's start with creating an object of the exception class. So exception ex is equal to new exception, and there are overloaded constructors here, and then you throw ex. So this is what we're doing to throw an exception. Create an object of the exception class and throw that object. Can we combine these two lines into a single line? Can we combine these two into a single line? All that we do is what? Yes. Throw new exception. Right? We've seen this syntax before. Now, when you come back here, I've changed the code from yesterday. I've changed it slightly. There could be a format exception that is occurring. There could be a, null reference exception, if at all. I don't have a null reference exception here. But when this exception occurs, when the value of P1 is more than 100, then it will go into this code block, into the catch for this one. And what will it show me right now? What will it show me right now? ex.message. What will ex.message give me right now? What message am I giving? Am I giving any message?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No. So let's see what ex.message gives us right now. So this is the code that would run if obj.p1 is a value more than 100. Okay. Let's try running this code. And let me first give you a valid value. So if I give you a valid value of obj.p1, let's say 10. So it says no exception, no problem. But if I gave an invalid value, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, I give an invalid value and I press enter. See what it does here. What is the default exception message that is shown here?
System.exception was thrown.
Exception of type system.exception was thrown. This is the default message. Now I don't want the default message. So what I could do is the exception class has an overload out here to the constructor where it takes a message as a parameter. Right? It takes a message as a parameter. So I could pass my own message. And when I do this, let's try running how it looks now. What is the difference that you will notice out here? What is the change out here?
Exception message is updated.
I can give my own message out here. Okay. So this is one thing that what you can do. Now the problem with this approach or this type of code is that supposing I wanted to write different exception handling code for different exceptions. Let's say, for example, let's say in your employee class, assignment 1 that you did, you had 4 properties: employee number, name, basic, and department number. Now in that code, what if I wanted to write code like this, which said catch invalid name exception, right? And similarly, I wanted to catch invalid, basic exception. What if I wanted to catch these exceptions separately? So currently, it does not allow you this. Currently, it does not allow you this. Because why? The problem is that you have not created these exception classes. So I don't have invalid name and invalid basic exception. But why would I want to use this approach? What is the advantage of this approach?
You can handle different scenarios.
Sorry, say that again.
You can handle different scenarios.
Yeah. So you can handle different exceptions differently. Instead of writing one common code for all exceptions, you can handle different exceptions differently. So I don't have an invalid name and invalid basic, but I do have an invalid P1, which I'm going to ask you to help me code. So invalid P1 exception, I want to code this. And this obviously doesn't work. What do I need to do to get it to work? What will I need to do to allow me to compile my code? Come on, you've done this before.
We need to throw invalid P1 exception.
Okay, we'll throw an invalid P1 exception, but if you have to throw an invalid P1 exception, what needs to be done?
Create a class.
Okay, I'll first do what he suggested, but this also is not working. For this to work, yes, create a class, carry on. Carry on.
Create
Complete the answer.
Create our own exception class.
Create a user-defined exception class and extend it from exception class.
Okay, so you need to create your own exception class. So public class invalid P1 exception, and make sure that it inherits from either exception class or any of its derived classes. So it needs to inherit from exception either directly or indirectly. Right? So we'll, in the first example, we'll just inherit from exception. Right? We're inheriting from this class. Now this code works. So to throw works, and so also the catch works. Let me change this. And let me show you right now what I get in ex.message. If I run this code right now, this is what I have done out here. What will I need to, what would be the default message shown out there? I have not given any message. So what is the default message shown out there? What is the default message shown? Yes. Like in the first example, exception of type, whatever the class name was thrown. In the first example, it showed you exception of type system.exception was thrown. So this is the default message. Now, what do I need to do to get this to work? So I don't want this. I want to now do what? Pass a message, just like I was doing for the earlier example. So what do I need to do to get this to work? Why is this not working?
You have to
Constructor.
define a constructor in invalid P1 exception
Right.
with one parameter.
Correct. So you need to, you're creating an object of that class. You need to create a constructor which matches that. And this takes a string message as a parameter. Right? And if you try running this now the code would work. So the code would compile and would show you the message that you wanted. Right? So you can get your message out here. Correct or no? So that's how we'll be getting this to work. Is it working the way we want it to work?
No. No, sir.
What's the problem again?
We have to pass that message to exception class.
Right. So we need to, the message property of the exception class needs to be initialized. So what I want to do here is base.message is equal to message. This message has been defined in the exception class. Or this dot message, even if you want to write that down. But this doesn't work. Why doesn't this work? What is the problem here? Is this property or indexer exception dot message cannot be assigned to because it is read only. So if it was not read only, I could have done this, but I can't do this. So what are the other technique that we generally use whenever we are writing a derived class? What have we said all along? What should the derived class do? Yes.
Call the constructor of exception class.
Correct. For initializing the properties that had been defined in your base class, you need to call the constructor of the base class and pass it whatever values the base class has. So like what you did in your assignment, like what is expected out here. So what would you do out here? You would simply say colon base of message. And the exception class does have a constructor that takes a message as a parameter. We have seen that in the previous example. So now would this code work? Now would it do what I expect it to do? I'm passing the message property to the base class. What will the base class constructor do now? Yes. What will it do?
It will set the message we have passed.
It will initialize the message property. So hopefully now I should get that invalid P1 in my output. If I give a wrong output, now I'm getting invalid P1. So this is what you'll need to do in every exception class that you create. Now you can add on more details to that exception class, but this is the bare basic minimum that you'll have to do to create your own exception class. Questions, if any? Yes. Anything that you'd like to ask about this before we move? Okay.
So
Yeah.
it may be the silly question. I don't
No,
know.
no questions are silly.
Earlier, we are also passing the message in else block, and now we are again passing the message. So what is the difference between else and exception?
Where is the else?
Earlier, whenever we are creating
We are saying
properties.
this here.
Yes, sir. The same thing we are doing here again.
We are not doing the same thing. In the earlier case, we had done console.writeLine. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So that thing went to whom? From
Uh,
developer, it went to whom?
End user.
End user. Okay.
Hmm.
Now here, where am I passing this to?
User.
Am I doing a console.writeLine here?
No,
So who's going to get this exception?
user.
User. That is the difference. So I will, the user is the one who's creating an object of your class, and the user will now get the exception here. And now he can do what he wants to do with it now. Is he forced to do this? Is he forced to do this? He
No.
could, for example, write this message that is coming in a log file. He can, by default, set a valid value to the message. He can, if he wants to, accept the value from the user again. So what he does with that message now is his lookout. If he's creating a different type of application, if he's creating, let's say, a web application, then the console.writeLine won't be there. He'll write some other code accordingly. If he's creating a desktop application, he'll create some other code accordingly. So it is not a silly question. It is the most important question that you can think of. Because there's nothing, what you did in the first case, what you did on day 2, there was no problem with the syntax. I had no issue with the syntax. But I had a major problem with the way in which you had designed your code, wherein your developer was directly talking to the end user and not letting the user know anything. So I have a problem with that approach. And we discussed why that is not a correct approach. Do you remember why, right at the start of our discussion?
Yes, sir.
So that is what the core question here is. Are you convinced?
Yes, but we can say we can write some clarification code in the like exception handling. We can write the code, but same thing we can do in else statement as well, no?
No, darling, you're not understanding the basic difference. Let's say right now I'm doing both classes, but let's say I'm the developer. Okay? You're the user. So Yogesh is user number 1, Sagar is user number 2, and Abhishek is user number 3. So first 3 users who I can see out here. Okay? Yogesh wants to create a web application. Sagar wants to create a desktop application, and Abhishek wants to create a console application. So if Yogesh wants to create a web application, and if in my code, if I did console.writeLine, if I did this is the ticking time bomb. When Yogesh uses my class, his web application will crash. Why will it crash? Because it cannot do a console.writeLine. So what I have successfully done with this else, if I write code like this, I have put in code that will only work with what? With console application. Second thing, if Yogesh is using my application, Yogesh doesn't even come to know about the error coming in the code. I'm talking to the end user. So Yogesh doesn't even know that something has gone wrong. He's blissfully unaware. Are we clear on this?
Yes, sir. Now clear.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any other queries or questions? All right. So now the thing that we talked about yesterday, I'll take you back to this. You remember application exception?
Yes, sir.
We said that we will use application exception for any user.
Custom exception.
So I'm just going to make a small change in this code. Instead of inheriting from exception class here, I will inherit from
Application exception.
application exception. That's the change I'm going to make. Now, where does application exception inherit from?
Exception.
From exception. Everything I showed you the hierarchy in the previous this here. See, application exception inherits from exception. So I am passing this message to application exception. What will application exception do? Pass it to its base class, which is the exception class. So the code will still be run by the exception class, but there's a hierarchy. Now, why are we suggesting this hierarchy? What is the advantage of doing this? The advantage of doing this is when you try writing code here. Okay, I think I've closed that window. When you're writing code out here, you can now catch your exceptions in this way. Okay. What will this catch now? This catches line number 23, catches what? Invalid P1 exception. What does line number 27 catch?
System exception.
So what is system exception? What exceptions are these?
It is base class of all the exceptions like arithmetic, null pointer.
Correct. So the exceptions that are thrown by .NET code, by the .NET base classes. So this would be all unhandled .NET exceptions. Whatever the base classes are throwing, that is what it will be doing. And what about application exception? What will this catch? Yes.
Basically, all the user mentioned exceptions, user defined.
Right. So all of these can be caught out here. So you can have common code for all .NET exceptions, common code for all user-defined exceptions which have not been handled. And also, what will this one do now?
It's the parent exception of application and system exception.
Right. So all other unhandled exceptions. Supposing somebody has directly inherited from exception. It is not required that you have to inherit in this way. What if somebody is directly inherited from exception? Then you can write code in this way. But this helps you, sort of make your code more organized. The exception handling can become more organized by saying that certain types of exceptions now can be caught together. And what type are we saying here now? All user-defined exceptions which have not been handled can be caught out here. And you might want to do some common code for that. Are we clear on this? So that's the advantage of inheriting from, instead of inheriting from exception, inheriting from application exception. Clear on this, everybody? All right. So this is how you could work with exception handling and how you can throw the exception. This is what we are doing for the developer section of the code, where you'll be throwing the exception rather than catching it. Right? Okay. I'm going to move on to the next concept unless there are any other questions.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
I have one question, sir. If any exception handled by the base class, like exception, why we need to write many catch blocks like arithmetic and other?
If there you have two options, then it is not compulsory to do anything. You have two options. If you want to write different code for different exceptions, if you want to, your choice. You're the boss.
Okay, sir.
If you want to write common code, you write common code. If you want to write different code, you can write different code. But the options must be given. Now, what the user does, this is his lookout. Okay.
Okay, sir.
All right. So let's move on to the next concept. And the next concept that we're going to look at is event handling.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Since user is getting that message about exception, so what should he do afterwards?
What should you do? That will depend on the
No,
different.
what should the user do?
There is no right answer to this. That will depend on the situation you are in. I mean, it's entirely up to you. I mean, I can give you other possibilities. One possibility is you end the program there only, saying that sorry, you can't give any wrong output. You end the program there. Second chance is you ask him to enter the value again. That could be another possibility. You ask him to enter the value again. So let's say accepting the value can be in a function, and that function can be called again here. Okay. Third possibility, you put in a default value there. You change the value, you put in a default value there. The user I'm talking about, not the developer. The user says, okay, I will put a default value if your value is not correct. You log the entry into log, log the entry into some error file. You put a value into the database. So what you do, there are many possibilities. There is no one right answer. Okay.
Okay.
See, we are right now looking at a console app. One second. We're looking at a console app. But what if it is a UI? So in a UI, what we might want to do, give a message saying that, sorry, this value could not be saved because of this reason. And then on the UI, there will be a button again. Let's say save, for example. So he changes the value, clicks on the button, gets your. Okay, so would be different here. The problem is that when you work with this sort of a UI with the console app, your options are very limited. But when you work with more UIs, then you have many more ways of handling that exception. So don't get stuck on the how of exception handling or what to do in that case. In a console app, you'll never be writing a console app in your life. You'll be creating UIs. But if I right now get into UIs, then there are too many concepts for you to grapple with. It becomes very difficult for you to understand the concept and separate it from the UI. UI has a different concept and the code has a different concept. So why we are writing code in a certain way is important. And then how to use that code in the UI again will be different. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
So let me go in for a new project and I'm going to call that as event handling. So what are the events? What are events? What are events? We talked about a brief talk, maybe a 1 minute talk about what are events in the previous example. What is an event?
Clicking mouse and.
So that is okay. That is an example of an event in this. But with respect, when you think as a programmer.
So non-critical way of conveying to the user something has
Very
happened.
good, very good. That is the answer I'm looking for. So event is a way of conveying something has happened in your system from the programmer to from the developer to the user. And we use the word non-critical way. Meaning what? When you're informing something in a non-critical way, he is not forced to take any action. So it is something like a notification. Notification is just, I mean, right now, for example, I'm getting a lot of notifications on my phone. I'm not taking any action on that. Imagine if every WhatsApp message I receive, I sit and respond to that. I'm not doing that. I'm getting a notification. I'm getting this thing saying that something has happened in your phone, something has happened in your system. I'm not worried about it. I don't have to take any action on that right now. All right, it's not a critical thing. So I don't have to, I'm just being informed about it. So that's exactly what an event would be. So when you're thinking like a developer, see the answer that you gave me, and click is an example of an event, or whatever, mouse down is an example of an event. There your thought is only like a user. So you have to think from the other side also, okay, what the developer has to do. So event is a notification that goes from a developer to a user. Are we clear on this, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And why did we say it's non-critical? Why did we say it's non-critical? What is the key difference?
Because it is not mandatory to handle that event.
Correct. It is not compulsory that you have to write some code for it. You meaning who? The user. Doesn't have to write any code for it. Are we clear on this? Okay, now I'm going to take up the same example that I took up earlier, where in this case also I've just copy pasted the same class. And I'm saying what? That let's say data is not valid. Now with data not being valid, my question to you is, should I throw an exception or should I raise an event? Should I throw an exception or should I raise an event?
Throw exception.
Sorry?
Throw exception.
Throw an exception without fail. Data not being valid are alarm bells. You bang the table, you tell him that unless you do this right, I don't want to carry on my system. Okay. So this is not a good example that I'm taking with you. If data is not valid, I should not be raising an event. I should be doing what? I should be throwing an exception. But I'm going to take up the same example with you because I want you to understand, from an easy example point of view. So it's making my job easier to explain to you how an event would be raised. Are we getting this? But events should not be raised in this scenario when data is not valid. Typically, events should be raised just to notify him that something has happened. Now, what is that notification? Could be anything. Anything happening in the state. So generally a change in state. Change in state meaning what? Maybe some value has changed. You want to tell the user, you know what, this value has got changed. And then maybe he takes action, he doesn't take action. So this is not a very good example. Conceptually, not a very good example. Not just not a very good, it's a bad example for showing you how events work. But I'm taking this example because I want to simplify things for you in the learning phase. Okay. But remember, data not being valid, always throw an exception.
Throw exception.
Okay. Now to explain to you how events work, again, we are going to go into that same 3-person mode, right? Of a developer, user, and end user. So I have a developer, I have the user, and I have the end user. 3 people again out here in play. The developer would create the class, the user would create an object of the class, and the end user is running the code and seeing how that code runs. Okay, same things as here, no changes here as well. Okay. Now to give you a clearer idea about how events work, I'm going to also take up a UI based example just to show you what is happening. Okay, we can do it without UI also, but visually when you see it, it's easier for you to understand. So I'm going to add a new project to this, but the type of project I'm adding here is a desktop based project, right, which is a Windows Forms application. So now this is not part of your syllabus. So don't focus too much on, oh, how the Windows app works and all of that. We're not focusing on that at all. I'm just using it to show you how events are working. So I'm not changing the name, and let's create one. Okay. So when you create a Windows Form app, you get a UI based application where you can drag and drop stuff and create code much easier than writing all code on your own. To give you a simple example, I'm going to do a simple hello world type example. So I'm going to go into the toolbox here, and in common controls, I have a button. So when I drag and drop this onto the form, now what I'm doing here is I'm creating an object of the class button. By dragging and dropping this button one here, this one here is one object of the class button. Okay. Now I have not written any code for it. But this code has been generated. So see what code has been generated here. Right? Button one, which is a what type? Of type button. Because I dragged and dropped that button. If I dragged and dropped some other control, it will create a control of that object of that class. Somewhere in the code, it is also doing button one is equal to what? Button one is equal to new button. It's also done that code also. Okay. This I have not written the code. This has been generated for me. Now I can write different events for this. So what are the different events? If you look at the different events out here, there are, there's a, if you right click and go into properties, there's a dialog box which shows you the different events. And these are all the different events that occur for that particular button. Okay. So look at the symbol for an event, and these are all the events that are occurring out there. Okay, and we'll come back to this. But the simple way of getting into that click event, click is the most common event, is you double click on that. In the design mode, you double click, and now you can write code in what is this now? It's a function called button one underscore click. What is button one here? What is button one here? What is button one? Name of that object? Underscore click. What is click now?
Event.
Okay. Let's create a simple message box dot show, which shows you some, whatever button has been clicked. Or let me write a hello world. Let's say. All right. And when you run this code now who's seeing this code run? When you run the code, who's the person who's interacting right now?
End user.
End user.
So when he clicks on the button, your code gets called. Okay. Now there are other events also, like he might click on the form. I'm clicking on the form right now, or I'm moving my mouse pointer on the form. Are those events also happening? Let's say, is there a click event for the form also happening?
No,
Mouse click event.
It is happening. I'm clicking on it. Click event for the form, not for the button. For the form, I'm clicking on it. I don't know whether you can.
okay.
Okay, click. Let me see it. Click. Okay. I'm clicking on this, but is the click event happening? Answer is yes. Is the user informed about it?
No.
Answer is yes.
No.
Answer is yes. He's informed about it. But is he forced to take any action?
No.
No.
That answer is no. So this is what I mean by non-critical. So he knows that, okay, and that click event happened for the form also. But he has chosen not to write any code for it. Are you clear on this critical, non-critical stuff? All right?
Yes.
Okay. So now you remember what we have done out here. And let's go back to our code. Or before we go to our code, let's look at this one here. So what did the developer do? The developer has created a class out here. Which class are we talking about? What object did we create? Object of which class? In the example that we just did.
Button.
Class button. Okay, you created an object of the class button. right? Okay, we'll see what is the code in there, that we'll see. That will come to later. Okay. Okay, who's the developer here in this example that we just tried? Who's the developer? Who's the developer?
The one who is creating button class?
Yeah, so who's he? Have you created? Have I created it? Who's created this?
You have created it.
Sorry?
You have created it, sir.
I have not created the button class. Don't go around telling ki, I know the person who created the button class. Don't go around telling that. People will come to me for autographs and whatnot. I have not created the button class.
Desktop.
Who has created the button?
Developer.
So who's the developer?
VSID.
Not Visual Studio. Who's the
Library.
developer?
Desktop. Desktop.
No, desktop is your
.NET.
desktop. So who's the developer? Somebody sitting in Microsoft has done this.
Yes.
Who's working on the .NET project? Right. We don't know who it is. Whoever. John Smith, maybe his name is. Whatever. Right. Most probably he's an Indian only. So Ravi Rangarajan, maybe his name is. I don't know. I don't know who it is. Who's the person created the button class? I really don't know. Somebody sitting in Microsoft has done this. Right? Let's call him Ravi. Okay. So Ravi has created the button class. Achha. Now, what does the user do? In this example, what did the user do? He went and he, on the form, he went and he created an object of the button class. Right? He went and created an object of the button class. So this is what he did. Created a form, created what? One object out here, button one, let's say. Correct?
Yes,
now, when
sir.
you dragged and dropped that button out here, when you dragged and dropped that button, what code got generated? I showed you the code. What did it do for you? What code got generated?
New object of button class was created.
Correct. So it declared a variable button one of type button. So this we didn't write code, but this was done for us. Okay, and then equal to new something. So ignore that new part right now. But this is what was actually done for us. And so what did the end user, or before we did that, what also was done for us was what? When you wrote some code for it, what are the code that was written here? Yeah, button one click was also written here. So there was a function written here called button one underscore click. Right? Okay, whatever. Void, let's say void button one. I have space, so I'll write it down. So there was some code written in here in which you went and wrote whatever code you wanted to. I mean, what you did was your lookout, message box.show. And what did the end user do? How did the end user now interact with the system? Yes, what did the end user do? When the end user saw the form running, what did he do?
He will create the event by clicking with the button.
Yeah, so he's the one who started off this whole thing. He's the one who clicked on the button. Right? Okay, now, okay, I'm going to try my best. Anyone who laughs is getting a -5. Laughs at my drawing. This is a mouse pointer, and which was actually connected to your mouse. Okay, and he went and he clicked on this button here. Okay, so this is what the user did. Right? Anyone laughing? Quickly, let me see. Okay, no one laughing. Good. Otherwise, I see Suraj Saunke smiling in the photograph. -5. Okay. Anyway. Now, when he clicked on this button, Who came to know about it first? Who came to know about it first? The first person who was informed was the developer. Now the developer has done what? What all has he done? He's got in here, okay? He's got in here a event called click. Right? He's got an event called click. Somewhere he's declared that. And he's written code, he says, if, let's say, click event happened, if click happens, all right, raise the click event. Right? So if a click happens, then raise the click event. Right? Are we clear on this?
Yes, sir.
So this here, when this situation occurs, what would happen next? At this point, what will happen? Supposing the click event happens, what happens next? What happened next? When the click event happened, what happened next? When you ran the click, when you clicked on this, what happened next?
Message got displayed.
So where was that message got displayed? Where was
inside the button one click method.
On a message box.
No, yeah, but what code fired off? This
Method.
button underscore click message event code fired off. Yes or no?
Yes.
It went and called this code na, in this here, whatever this one. Now, who's written this button one click? The user. And can I say then the code that the developer will write would be something like this? Would be something like this button one underscore click. It is like calling that function. Yes or no? If the click happens, raise the click event. It's like calling the function. Agree or no? Yes. I want your opinion. I want your affirmation. Are you all understanding this whole process?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now let's pause and reevaluate. Who's the developer? Quicker answers, please. No, don't take too much time. Who's the developer?
Ravi.
Ravi. Sitting in
Microsoft.
Okay. When has Ravi written the code?
While developing the software, sir.
So when has this happened? .NET was released in 2001. So this button was there in version 1 of the software also. So when would Ravi have written this code?
2001.
So 2001 it released. Betas came out 2 years before that. Some 2-3 years before that he must have written the code. Right?
Yes.
So 2001 is about 22 years back. Another 3-4 years add out there. So now he's written this code 25 years back. Right? Okay. Now, who's the user?
The one who is writing the method.
So who's it right now? Don't say who's writing the message. The one who's creating the
We are right.
button object. The person who's creating the button object. He is the user. And he is also writing the code. Yes. So we are writing it. Who are we? Who are we?
Users.
I mean, yeah, Vikram or Abhishek or Sagar or Yogesh or Ankur or Saurabh or whoever. We are the people writing the code. Yes or no? So now think about this. We are writing some code in our button one click. Who's calling the code? Who's calling that code?
End user.
No. End user is triggering it off. But who's calling that code? This is being done by the developer. So my question to you is, how did Ravi 25 years back know that 25 years later, on a cold, wintry January morning, sitting in one corner of India, Abhishek or Yogesh or Sagar or Saurabh will write down this function. And he has to call that function. How did the developer know? Abhi, how old are you?
25.
25.
Yeah.
So this might have been written even before you were born. So how did Ravi know that time, 25 years back, that, my Abhishek will come one day. Mera Abhishek aayega, mera wo code likhega. I'm borrowing from you, like, what you all say, na? कि user friendly होना चाहिए. User friendly nahi hai, whatever. So how did he know that? Is my question to you. Is it possible for him to call that code which you're going to write so many years later? No, he doesn't know that function exists. But he is calling your code. So to make this happen behind the scenes, or not behind the scenes, but what is being used out here are delegates. So what do delegates allow you to do? They allow you to call a function. Right? Now, we don't know which function is going to be called. We don't know which function is going to be called. Function is going to be called much later. But we will create a delegate object which points to the function and call it through the delegate object. That's what Ravi is doing. Okay, so let's understand how Ravi is writing down the code. Before we get into any queries so far? All right.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
So can we say that this is just an abstract event and we are overriding it
This
as a
is
user?
just a
Abstract event, like he has just defined what to.
No, it is not. I'm saying it's a delegate.
Okay.
All right. Let me explain this further and then it'll be a little clearer what we're doing. But I'm telling you right now only that he is using delegates. So in one of the things that we mentioned about delegates, we said, where would delegates be used? So one of the things we said was delegates would be used in event handling. So we are now seeing how delegates are going to be used in event handling. Okay. All right. So what does Ravi need to do? He needs to create a delegate class that matches that signature. So help me create a delegate class that matches that signature. Signature of the event to call, button1 underscore click. So help me with this. Public delegate, carry on.
Void button1 underscore click.
Void, whatever name the delegate, doesn't have to be the same name, right? Del1. So that is the first thing that he'll do. He'll create a delegate class which matches that signature. Don't write it down. Don't write it down. If you're writing it down, don't write it down. I'll be giving you better option. Here I'm just giving you an overall bird's eye view. You want to write it down, write it down. I'm not stopping you from writing down, but I'm going to give you a better explanation once we are into the code. So we create a delegate class that points to this function. The second thing that we do, okay, so first step is what? Create a delegate class. That's what we're doing out here. That's the first thing that he has done. Second thing that we do out here is we, create a delegate object. So this delegate object that we create is effectively what our event is. So what is the event actually? What is the event actually out here? It's a delegate object. Okay. So this line that we're creating, event click. This is actually what? This is a delegate object. So here, this here is a delegate object. Okay. And the syntax for this would be slightly different. We'll look at the syntax when we are looking at the code. Or should I give the syntax? I'll give the syntax here, so that it's easy to understand. So I'm going to create my delegate class is what? Del1, and the name of the event was what? Click. But I'm going to call this as an event, and we'll see why we are calling it as an event when we are writing code. Okay, so what is click actually? What is click actually? What is click? It's an event. And what is an event actually?
Event is a delegate.
Action.
It's a delegate object. Okay. I heard action. We could have used action here. Who was that? Was it Shivani who was saying that?
Nikita.
Nikita. Okay. So yeah, Nikita said, why not use action? You can use action also, by the way. It doesn't have to be del1. She's noticed correctly. Why action? Why is she saying action? Signature.
No return type is
Because we
there.
are performing action.
Return type is void and no parameters. We could have used action also. Good spot. Okay. Now the third thing that we'll do here is, if the click events, raise the click event. So this is the same code. What are we doing here? Button1 underscore click. But instead of calling button1 underscore click, we'll not write this code. We'll simply call what? We'll simply call click. Right? Now, when we call click, what we want to do is what? We want to call button1 underscore click. But at the time when Ravi has written this code, you are not even born. So Ravi doesn't know which functions to call. Ravi just says, I will call the function. It is your job to make Ravi's object point to your function. Understand this? Why can't Ravi do this for us? Why can't Ravi do this for us?
Because he do not know what name we will give.
Because we are not even born. Forget about what name to give to our code. We are not even born. I mean, I was born, but you all were not. All right. So our code doesn't exist here. Our code doesn't exist at that point. So Ravi can't be doing this. So whose job is it to do this? It is my job, the person who is the user. So what will the user do? Now look at what the user does. He creates an object of that class. He creates an object of that class, button1 object he's created. The user will do this. Button1 dot click. What is button1 dot click? Button1 here is this object of the button1 class. Dot click is what? Is a delegate object. And he'll do a plus equal to button1 underscore click. And what is button1 underscore click? What is button1 underscore click?
Method.
Method that we are writing. And in this method, we will write the event handling. And what is this line doing? Button1 dot click plus equal to button1 underscore click. What is this line doing?
Pointing to the method.
Correct. Making Ravi's object. What is click? Click is a delegate object. Making Ravi's delegate object point to our function. So that is my job to be done. Ravi is not doing that. That I have. Are we clear on this? So Ravi has written his code. He's gone away. Maybe he's retired also now. We don't know where he is, right? He might be sitting on a beach, sipping his lemonade, whatever. We don't know what he is doing. Ravi says, I have done my job. I have called whatever click is pointing to. So whatever you want to make click point to, you pass. Are we clear on this, everybody? Ravi is doing CDAC. No, he's not doing CDAC. Ravi is not doing CDAC. This is a different Ravi. This Ravi has been overloaded. Same name, but different person. Okay. Clear on this, everybody? Questions, if any, at this point? Understood? That's how events would be handled by delegates. So if there are no questions, I'm going to jump into the code. All right, let's go back into the code then. Okay, now I'm not using this here. I'll go back to my example. Event handling. And what we are saying here is, the example that I'm taking is, if my data is not valid right now, I'm going to raise an event. Okay, I'm going to raise an event. Okay, step 1. Create a delegate class having the same signature as the event handler. That's step 1. So what are we saying here? Create a delegate class. This is the one that we're creating. Step 1, having the same signature as the event handler. What event handler are we talking about? What are we talking about here now? Event handler is what?
The method which is handling that message.
Correct. The method that is handling that event. Okay. All right. So help me create a delegate class which matches that signature. Come on. Call out the code. Come on.
Public delegate
Public delegate. Now pause for a second.
void.
1 second. Pause for a second. Now the return type. Now here you can write whatever you want. I had asked her to stop writing, but here you write whatever you want. Now the return type for all events is always going to be void. All events have a void return type. This I'm telling you. All events always have a return type of void. So my return type for this delegate is going to be always void. This is not going to change. Okay. You saw this button 1 underscore click. This is also void. This I showed you from the code that was generated. Now the second thing here is of course the name of the delegate. We can call it del1 also. We can call it any name. But there is a certain convention that they use. Do you want to use the convention, or can we call it del1? With your permission, can we call it del1? Or you want to use the convention?
We can call it del1.
Del1 is easier. Using the convention is also there. If I use del1, you won't know what the convention is. If I
So we
use
can
the
use
convention, then
convention.
you know what the convention is.
We can use convention.
Let's use the convention. So who's saying this now? Let's use a convention. Who's suggesting? Yogesh?
Yogesh, yes, sir.
Okay. So now the convention is that the name should be whatever is the event name with a suffix of event handler. So if your event is called X, your delegate should be called X event handler. If your event is called Y, your delegate will be called Y event handler. Okay. Now I want to call my event invalid P1 because I'm going to be raising the event when P1 is invalid. Okay. I'm going to call the event as invalid P1. So my delegate therefore will be called as what? My event is invalid P1. Delegate would be now what?
Invalid P1 event handler.
So invalid P1 event handler. I didn't want to give such a long name. Yogesh said, no, please use this long name. I was calling it del1. I don't know why Yogesh told me, no, use this long name. Achha, now the next step here is the parameters to that event. Now, this would vary. Some events may have parameters, some events may not have parameters. Like for example, a click event may not have parameters. A click event may not have parameters. But a key press event will have a parameter. Can you tell me what in this example for key press, what will be the parameter that you will receive? Key press.
The key which is pressed.
Key and
The key which is pressed. Or in the mouse move, what could be the parameters that you receive?
X and Y.
The X and Y coordinates. So events may contain additional data about themselves, or they may not. In the first example, I am not keeping any additional information. I'm not passing any information. My event right now does not have any parameters. But in the second example, I will take some parameters. That's step 1 done. Okay. Step 2. What did we have to do in step 2? Step 2, what did we do? Second step, what did we do?
Creating a delegate object.
Which is what? Which is your event.
Event.
Okay. So step 2 is create a delegate object, and we are calling this as a event. Right? This is simple. Name of the delegate was invalid P1 event handler. By declaring it, I'm declaring it as public. Now, because it is an event, I'm marking it as an event, and it also prompts me with what I'm doing. So it's telling me, it's picked it up, smart enough to pick up what I want to do. So invalid P1 event handler. What is invalid P1 event handler?
Name of the delegate class.
And what is invalid P1? What is invalid P1? Name of the delegate object. Or in other words, what is delegate object also being called here as? What are we also calling it as?
Event.
event.
Clear? Achha, now before I go further, it is showing me this error which we discussed yesterday. Did we talk about this yesterday? The nullable thing?
No, sir.
No, we are not talking about nullable? Question
No.
mark?
No, not yesterday. In the previous lectures, we have done for that value type, but not yesterday.
I have not shown you this nullable of how to remove this. For while doing delegates, I did it with you or no?
No, sir.
I've not done it. Okay. Okay. I should have done it. I don't want to bring that discussion here. Right now, I'm just doing something to remove the exception, and I will explain it in the later stage. Right now, I'm already short of time, but I don't want to confuse you with concepts. So I'm going to do something right now, but not explain it.
Then
Yeah, this was done, sir.
yes, sir.
Sorry for that. Sorry for that.
Okay. All right. So anyway, this is removing the nullable error. Okay. Anyway, coming back to this, create a delegate object, which was, which we are calling it as an event. Now you have learned how to do it as what? As this. This is what you have learned. But I'm also saying that this delegate object is an event, and I'll show you what is the difference between adding the keyword and not adding the keyword. Okay, we'll see that difference. So that's step 2. Third step, what do I do? If the click happens, raise the click event. So what am I doing here in this case? Just simply calling the raise, click event. So this is step 3. Raise the click event, or not click event. What is that? Raise the event. All that we're doing here is call the delegate object. Okay. Give me the code for this. What is the name of the event? Yes. Name of the event was what?
Invalid P1.
Invalid P1.
So that's all that we're doing out here. Invalid P1. Now, if you look at invalid P1, it shows you what? A lightning strike. Like, yo, something's happening, something really cool happening out here. It's an event that we all want to know about. Somewhere else that you have seen the lightning strike? Have you seen this lightning symbol somewhere else?
Properties.
Very good.
Yes.
So invalid P1, I'll call this. And we saw this also when we went into the properties. These are the list of events. Okay, so these are the list of events that we had. And okay, this is what we are actually calling. That's it, done. Finished. So step 1 was create the delegate class. Step 2 was declare the event of that delegate type. And step 3 was simply to do what? To call it. Done. We have finished this code. If we were Ravi, at this point we can go home. I know we are already home with work from home and all of that. But at this time, Ravi can go home. Why?
Because
Why
he
can
has
Ravi
done
go
the developer and the user. No, developer
He's
part.
done the developer's job. He's finished his job. He's gone home now. He's already, while we are speaking, he didn't even wait. He's picked up his bag and he's left. Oh, I don't know whether that bag that he's picked up is a delegate bag or not, but he's picked up his bag and he's gone. He's gone home. Now what do we do? Next step. Finish this section. Now what are we doing next? The user code. So user code now we have to do. What do we have to first do? First do what?
The button object.
Yes.
Button reference.
Create a object of that other class that is created. And secondly, to his event, we have to pass our function. So we have to write this function and pass this function to his event. Okay. Yes. Are we clear on this? So help me with the code. I'll be doing this in main. First step, what should I do? Now here I'm using button, there it's called class 1. So give me the code for equivalent code.
Class 1, class 1 dot this method.
Okay, before I do that, class 1. So not class 1, but class 1 obj
Yes.
class 1 is equal to new class 1.
Yes.
That's the first thing that I'm doing. Then I need to write that method. I need to write that method out here. So let me write that method. Okay, what's the method that I'm writing? What method am I writing here? Okay, by convention, what will it be called? Obj class 1 underscore. Name of the event was what?
Invalid P1.
Invalid P1. That's the event that I'm writing code for. Clear on this? All right. That's done. Here I'll write down whatever code I want to. Event handling code. Okay. What next? What next? What next?
The code body.
No, this part now. We have written the code. I have written all the code. So what do I need to do next now? What are the
Pointing.
right?
Pointing to a function.
Make Ravi's delegate object or make Ravi's event point to what? Point to my function.
To a function.
The function that I just wrote out there. So help me with this code, please. Help me with the code. Tell me, call out the code. Yes, please.
Obj class 1
Carry on.
dot invalid pi
P1 it is.
P1
That's your
plus
event.
plus
That's
equals
your
to
event. Plus equal to
obj class 1 underscore invalid P.
Right. That's what we're doing. What are we saying now? Now we have associated Ravi's, event with our code. And finally, in what situation is the event being raised? When was the event being raised? When is the event
When
being
value
raised?
is less than.
When the value is more than 100. Right? So all that I'm going to do here is obj class 1 dot p1. And what if I given a valid value? Then what will happen in all this code? What will happen if I give a valid value? Then what will happen?
The event won't raise, sir.
Event won't raise? Are you sure? Let's try this. If I try running this code with valid values, right? That's the end of the output. The event didn't fire off. But what would happen if I gave an invalid value? What would happen with the invalid value? At this point, what will it do? It will call invalid P1. And we have made invalid P1 point to our function. So that's when it will get called. Let's try running this. And if it is an invalid value, then the event handling code would fire. Are we clear on this, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just need to inform the other batch that I'm going to be 5 minutes late. So just give me a minute. All right. Questions, if any, please. Questions, if any, at this point of time. Yes. No questions?
So we'll try it once in the next lecture. Can we ask? I guess till this.
You can ask even after a week, no problem.
Okay, sir.
But at this point, do we have any conceptual questions or anything that you're not clear? At this point, you can always ask questions later. At this point, do we have any queries? So I have a few things to show you here. I have a few points to make here. First thing is, why did I need to give the word event? Would it have also worked without giving it a word of event? Would it also have worked without event? Because what are we doing? We're creating a delegate object, which we said was an event. But what if I don't mark it as an event? Would my code still run? The answer is yes. You will get the same code as before. You'll get the same output as before. Now, why do you need the word event? What is the reason for needing the word event? The word event is required to identify to everyone concerned that this is not a regular delegate object, but this is an event. So firstly, if you look at this now, while calling the event, like look at this. What is this now being changed to? Do you see the symbol? What is this now? It's not an event anymore. What does it now become?
Field.
It's become a field. So my code worked the same way. But there will be certain people who are interested in knowing what are the events that are there in your class. Like, for example, when you go into the properties out here, what does Visual Studio show you? What does Visual Studio show you? What are all these? See, these here are all the properties. These here are all the properties. But these here are all the events. So it needs to know now, what are the events in your class. So right now, if you don't mark it as an event, then that event will not be shown in this list of events out here. Are we clear on this, everybody? So to make sure that everybody concerned should know that this is an event, you have to give it to the keyword of event. That's the first thing that you have. Are we clear on this, everybody? All right. So this is to publicize to everybody that this is an event. Second thing that I want to point out here is this code. This code. All right. Why the plus equal to? Why the plus equal to? Why the plus equal to? What does plus equal to indicate?
That we are combining it with other delegate.
Correct. This is the multicast delegate. When you create your own delegate class, what is this? This is inheriting from multicast. So this is the multicast delegate. So it says that if there are already some event handlers defined, I am adding a event handler. I'm adding an event handler. And here the plus equal to syntax is required. If you don't give plus equal to, it causes you a problem. It says that if you're using events, then you must use plus equal. Equal to syntax, the compiler doesn't allow for events. If it was not an event, then equal to would have worked. Equal to would have worked when? If this was not an event, then equal to would have worked. Because this is a regular delegate. It's not an event. But if it's not an event, then what will happen now? What will happen then? Other things associated with events will not work. Things like Visual Studio, for example, will not recognize that this is an event. So because this is marked as an event, your compiler, now don't ask me why they're forcing it, but they're saying that there is a possibility that you might have other event handlers that someone else is adding for you, you don't know about it. So you add to the event handler. You don't say equal to, because somebody else might be creating an event handler for you. And who's this someone else? Actually, Visual Studio. I'll show you the code that Visual Studio generated. If you look in the code out here, you should not worry about this. But if you look at this code, Visual Studio, this is, Visual Studio generated code. Right? This Visual Studio has generated the code. And one of the lines it has written is what? Button1.click plus equal to the event handler. Event handler is the name of the delegate that's handling that. Are we clear on this? So, which is why this syntax is slightly different from delegates, but behind the scenes, it is delegates only. So all concepts which are learned with delegates will work here also. Plus equal to will work, minus equal to will work, everything else will work. Clear on this?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now I'm not done with events. I would have ideally liked 15 minutes more to wrap up on events, but that gives you a chance to practice all this before you come in for the next session, where I will conclude with the example of events. So there's still a few things pending out here, but you all can try out this much part of the code so far. Okay. All right.